Hey guys, Reef here. Some of you guys were looking to sleeve your power supplies, so I want to show you how I do it and what I use. I use 550 paracord. You can pick it up at any sporting goods store, army surplus store. It comes in many different colors. Heat shrink, 3/16 to 3/32. You can pick this up at Home Depot. Electrical tape, a Bic lighter, tape measure, needle nose pliers, razor blade, and some paper clips, and then the harness that you'll be sleeving. All right, let's get started. We have our harness, got our tape measure locked out. Go ahead and kind of measure that. That's going to give us roughly a little over 25.5 inches. So let's cut our paracord. And I'm going to go ahead and go to about 25 3/4 just to give it a little extra. That's not going to hurt anything. Keep in mind it does stretch, so you can undercut yourself if you're tugging pretty hard. So I'm just putting my fingers lightly on this and kind of just going to pinch that off and make my cut. Set that aside. I'll do more later. With the heat shrink. The heat shrink is going to be about 1/2 inch long per cut. It comes in 3-inch sticks, so that'll give you about 6 small 1/2 inch tubes. And since they're all the same size, it's going to make for a nice finish later. Now I'll go ahead and finish up cutting the rest of the paracord, and I'll show you the rest of the sleeving process here in a little bit. So I finished cutting my paracord to length. I've got my heat shrink to length, and I've got my harness here. My harness is fully modular, so I've got terminals and connectors on both ends. Makes it super easy. You could still get away with sleeving a non-modular or semi-modular power supply. You'll just have to do some finagling, but that's entirely up to you. So with the terminals, the actual physical electrical connectors inside here, those are the terminals. Outside here I'm going to refer to as the connector. On each side of the terminal there's going to be 2 small pins, and I'm going to slide these modified paper clips into each side of the terminal. Sometimes you will need to move the terminal back and forth. You can use the wire on the other side to move it around. Kind of slide that in there so they're now on both sides. I'll take my needle nose pliers, kind of give them a little push. You'll learn to know how much pressure you're putting on here. And now that's going to push in 2 small pins on the inside of here, so you'll be able to pull out the terminal here. Now the pins that I'm referring to are on each side of here. I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but they're on both sides here, and that's what keeps the terminal inside the connector. Now we can take the electrical tape. I went ahead and just made a small square of it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the terminal with electrical tape, because when you sleeve it through the paracord there's little sharp points that can cause it to snag, and you're not going to have a good time. And it should just be nice and snug. You shouldn't have any edges sticking out there. So we'll take our first length of paracord. Inside the paracord there are 7, 5, whatever little strands. Just pull those out, set them aside, and then start feeding your wire into one side. Careful not to fray the edge too much. Once I get it in, probably about 2 inches, I will burn the edges. Not so much burn the edges, but just melt them so they don't fray and cause an undesirable look. Just kind of bring that around so it's nice and uniform, and then slide everything down. I'll just kind of caterpillar the paracord down the wire till it's all the way down there. once that's down there, I'll fray the edges, or burn the frayed edge on this side. And go ahead and remove the electrical tape. Set aside, you can use it for the next wire. And what I'm doing here is I'm placing the paracord in a place where once it goes into the connector, once the terminal goes into the connector, the paracord is not going to hinder that going in there. So I've got about 3/8 of an inch, maybe less than that, from this point here, from the end of that terminal to right there. And then I'll just put my heat shrink on, and I'll just rest that down like that and heat shrink it down. Now the heat shrink will burn if you hold it too closely. Don't hold it directly in the flame, I'm just holding it just outside so it gets that ambient heat without overly burning it. It's easier to control. And that should be about done. Then I will plug it back into the connector. The connector does have a D shape to it. You can see down on the bottom the D shape. I like to put it right back in exactly how I found it. If you look inside the connector, you can see all the other terminals are facing the same way, so it makes it easy to identify. And I definitely recommend doing one at a time. So now I've got that side. I'll go ahead and reverse the process, or continue along every other wire until all of them are done on both of these connectors of this harness, and then I'll pin out this side and do the exact same thing, just using what we've learned on this side to this side. Okay, so I pretty much got all this done. Just have the last two to go. One thing that you can keep in mind is that when you're pinning out these terminals, that you'll have to do some trial and error to find the right amount of pressure that you feel comfortable pulling on the wire with, because the last thing you want to do is pull the wire out of the terminal. So if you feel like you're prying too hard, pulling back on it, it's not going to let go. Pull out the pins, try again, and you'll get to a place where you're comfortable pulling out that terminal. It's coming along pretty nicely. One thing I would have done is probably may have cut a little bit longer sections of paracord so that it's not, I don't have to pull so tightly on it and stretch it out. That's the only thing that I would have done differently with this particular loom. But trial and error is probably going to be your best bet, especially when you're starting off. If you have a old power supply that you have, give it a shot on that, just so you get more comfortable working with the terminals and kind of the length of paracord that you're going to be using. Until you get good at and comfortable doing your own. I did a non-modular Corsair GS600 before I did this one. This particular power supply is a Corsair AX850, which is obviously a fully modular power supply. The Corsair GS600 was not, but it turned out okay. I was happy, and it gave me the confidence to go on and actually do this particular one. And that is our CPU auxiliary power, all nice and sleeved up, ready to be put in. So that's that. I got everything plugged in. Everything turned out real nice. I had a lot of it done already before, but I'm glad I was able to show you guys. I didn't go into detail about the Molex cables or the fan cables. So, I mean, an easy Google search should be able to, get you what you need. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm glad I was able to make this for you. Make a good weekend project for you guys. Again, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in game. Talk to you later. See ya.